Welcome to Anchored Not Anxious. This is where you gain a deep belief your life matters to God and discover the anchoring practices to manage anxiety and worry. I'm Terri Hutchinson, your host. Welcome to part 2 of Let's Make Over Your Mind. In part 1, you were inspired to become the master of your mental playlist. In this episode, you will complete your makeover by developing affirming, calming, and beneficial thoughts. I find it helpful to visualize the power difference between positivity and negativity. If we could weigh thoughts on a scale, then negative messages would carry more weight than positive ones. Negative messaging is sticky like glue, while positive messaging bounces off. Doesn't it seem like negative statements are louder and clearer than affirming and hope-filled words? Cultivating power-positive thinking helps us lower the volume of negative messaging. There are many beneficial thought paths. We get to choose the frequency and flow of positive and affirming beliefs within our minds. On my end, it's always been a bit difficult to cultivate a healthy mental playlist. Those pessimistic tones are louder, stronger, and more insistent and consistent. But I've learned change only happens if I take notice and redirect away from negativity. I believe we can generate constructive and motivating perspectives and inject these into any mental streaming session. Using an example from my mental life, this is how it works. Imagine this setting. I'm exiting my work building at the end of a 9-hour day. As I walk toward my car, my focus leans toward what's left to do in this day as I leave the work shift behind. Yet, by the time I merge onto the interstate, I'm remembering a funny comment by my coworker, and I chuckle out loud. As this reflection fades, I recall a mid-morning email. Remembering the infuriating statements ignites frustration. My mindset turns defensive. Agitation increases as I recall the conversation and the reactions of fellow nurses pertaining to the email. This provokes more adverse thoughts and momentum building. This is negative streaming at its best. There were several checkpoints when I could have activated helpful, calming thought paths. These are a few reasons why I did not do it. I wanted to feel angry. I lacked the discipline to stop the stream. It was easier to let the thoughts roll than to move onto a more calming path of thinking. Easier and completely unhelpful. Fact 1. I get to choose what I think. Fact 2. Autopilot negative thinking cannot lead me to peace of mind. Life events dictate the power and prevalence of negative thoughts. In my situation, I worked in an environment where the level of trust was poor and tense relationships prevailed. Actual negative voices in the workplace were replaying in my mind, and I added my voice to it as well. Redirecting our thoughts is not impossible, but it requires self-control and a desire to want to think differently. So, let's walk through that example again, and I'll show you the checkpoints where I could have redirected my mind. The first checkpoint was presented when I walked out of the work building toward my car. I'm carrying a huge backpack of negativity with me. I could have tuned in to my active mindset and recognized my negative stream. Recognition leads me to a choice. Stop thoughts about work and focus on anything affirming or pleasing. For instance, gratitude for what did or did not happen during the shift. Quoting affirmative meditations or Bible verses. Putting in the ear pods with spa meditation or an uplifting podcast. Now, the second checkpoint occurs when I merged onto the inner state. I did not have to reflect on the day. I did it intentionally. Remembering my coworker's funny story was a good thing until the ranting began. I moved from the funny story to the irritating email. Here I can recognize the negative stream and ask myself, do I want to be thinking about this? Are these thoughts hurtful or helpful? If I know my internal monologue is hurtful and will increase my stress, then I can choose anything lifting my spirit. Because I'm in the car, soothing, calming, inducing music is a go-to. As the story goes, I deliberately dwelled on what was wrong and discouraging. I chose not to redirect toward a healing and beneficial thought path. Consequently, I walked into my home bearing a negative mental state. A pessimistic thought life will eventually manifest through our attitude as well as verbal and nonverbal communication. Eventually, there are consequences. What you think can hurt or heal you or end up hurting others. Here are some examples of power positive voices. There's the finding God in it voice. Your trusting God activates this thought track. The hope voice or hopeful statements become active as you rely on God's promises and believe God is with you. The lighthearted voice speaks as you seek to find joy in any situation. Gratitude proclaims there are things going well and good in your life. Forgiveness speaks healing over you and over others. The reflection voice carries a kind and gentle tone as you examine your heart and attitude. Faith talk assures you of God's presence both in the past and in the present. The admiration voice says you and others are good and worth celebrating. Optimism speaks encouragement to stay the course, seeking and reaching your desire. The encourager or courage voice is another soul forward of fire and urges you to stand strong. Self-compassion tells you God's grace is sufficient. His mercy for you is never ending. There is no shame or self-condemnation in this voice. Speaking love statements reminds you of your gifts. Self-love and love for others becomes a beacon of warm light touching everyone in your path. Your soul shines when you listen to self-love. It's amazing all the wonderful and motivating thoughts available to us. We thrive and live well by generating an affirming mindset. I hope my personal story reveals the why and how of creating a healing thought life. My biggest hurdle will always be the decision to turn off the negative stream. Yes, it takes effort to establish a healing mental state. You can retrain your brain, think intentionally, and flip the script. The benefits are great, and you are worth the effort. Thank you for listening. Meet me at my Facebook page, Terri L. Hutchinson. Find more content there or subscribe to the monthly newsletter. Until next time,